What is community everywhere? Well, I hope you'll stick around to find out a little bit about what we mean with my guest, Jamie Langskov of Chaotic Good Consulting. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. Holly, why don't you go ahead and hit the intro? Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you happen to be. You have tuned into the live stream for Talk About Your Community from Clocktower Advisors. I'm Todd Nilson, your host. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I'm really glad you're able to join me for this every other week live stream session where I bring in all kinds of leaders from the world of community, customer success, people that are just really good at thinking about how to bring people together, how to get them to connect, create, and live more meaningful, joyful lives overall. I love this space and have been doing this work since about 2013, formally and informally, long before that. So I appreciate you chiming in with comments, ideas, questions, remarks, and we're going to have a really great conversation here today. The idea of community everywhere is something that if you Google it, it comes up first of all as a mobile app. So forget about that. That's not what we're talking about. Community everywhere is a concept that has kind of come into play, I would say, within the year. But it's something that's been around with us for a while, where the question is community something that is part of our, is it a centralized platform? If you're talking about community online, is it, instead of it being a centralized platform, is it all these different social kinds of platforms that we have? LinkedIn, Twitter, any of the usual suspects that you would think about, how should we be thinking about this? How does it impact our business operations? And that's really kind of what we're working on today. Quick shout out to Drew Krieger. First comment of the day that I'm seeing here. Really glad you're able to join. Would love to hear from everybody else who was able to tune in today as well. Before I bring on my guest, Jamie, I just wanted to do a quick couple of administrative items. First of all, my regular showrunner, Kalisa, is out on a much-deserved vacation, but her able engineer Holly is on today, and she's helping me out with the show. So I'm always grateful to have somebody keeping me sane behind the scenes, and I really appreciate that. Also wanted to mention to you that the next session, I don't have it up yet, but we will have it posted up to the Clocktower Advisors channel soon and on YouTube soon. Is going to be Friday, August the 25th, same time. Same places, LinkedIn and YouTube, and we're going to have back one of my favorite people in the world, Amadou Diallo, who is a expert storyteller, extraordinary video creator, and just all around terrific human being. Amadou is going to be coming back on, and we're going to be talking about using improv and storytelling for community building. It's going to be a terrific event. I hope you'll join us for that. So watch for that. I'll have it posted up rather soon, as soon as we get all the graphics and everything ready for it. So with that being said, let's switch gears back. Hello to all the folks who joined in: Max, Laura, Kelly, Tiffany. So great to see you guys. Thanks for chiming in. I'm going to bring on Jamie here. Jamie, great to see you. Hello. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Todd?
I am doing great. I've had my caffeine this morning, as if you couldn't tell. And we have a thunderstorm brewing outside. So suddenly my screen should go black. It just means that I've been blown up and blasted to a cinder by the lightning from the heavens, which was inevitable to happen to me at some point. But no, Jamie, I've been looking forward to having you on the show for a good while now. Why don't you, I usually start with a question of, tell me your community origin story. How did you get here, and how did you get to Chaotic Good Consulting, which, by the way, I personally love as a title for the consultancy?
Thank you. So I had an interesting journey here. I think a lot of folks ended up in community on accident. So my journey was not much different. I was doing my MBA, and I was desperately applying for jobs, and I came across this really interesting internship in knowledge management. And at the time, I had no idea what that was. And I was living in Topeka, Kansas. So the job market was a little strange, and I got this opportunity to come in and interview with this knowledge manager who was an amazing person, is an amazing person. And she said, I get all of these applications from people who are very technical, but they don't have amazing communication skills. And she said, I really need somebody who can understand what the engineers are telling me and then communicate that to non-technical people. And so in taking that internship, I started to really grasp the niche that community people, which is what my profession evolved into, really the value that we provide. We are able to be connectors and facilitators. And so from there, the rest is history, as they say. I've tried all the different business elements, but keep coming back to community.
Well, we're definitely glad that you're part of the space. You're a colleague through the Community Consultants Collective, which is a group we are kind of co-creating around a path for people in the community world who are being consultants. But I mean, you've come from some large enterprises like SAP and MongoDB. So I mean, you've got some terrific experiences under your belt from building and running and helping communities to thrive over a series of years.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and like I said, the niche part of it is really critical to my story. When I joined SAP, I was initially given an interview, and then the interview was canceled because the hiring manager decided she wanted someone with more like marketing experience. And I wrote the recruiter back after getting mad first. I wrote the recruiter back and I said, look, that's fine. I understand that they want more marketing experience, but I want you to understand that I have this specialized experience where I interned at Colgate doing this very specific thing that you are looking for somebody able to do. You can either upskill somebody or you can take me and I can evolve as we go. And that ended up earning me back an interview. And I spent almost 7 years there building community and working with the product support team. And it was a transformative experience. So it was really important to recognize that is our special value, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's a terrific story. Quick shout out to Jenny and Deb, who just also joined in and said hello. Great to see so many friends on the stream here today. And again, this is a very interactive stream. Jump in if you got questions, comments, for Jamie or for myself. And if you happen to check this out in the replay, we do definitely watch for comments and try to respond to everybody that jumps in with something. Jamie, I want to turn to our main topic, but before we do that, I just wanted to ask about the name of the consultancy. Why Chaotic Good Consulting?
Oh, I've been in a 6-month self-exploration as I launched this company, and I realized that all of the names that I could pick really didn't resonate with me. And I'm a huge nerd, and I met my first husband playing World of Warcraft, and
Nice.
I've played D&D, and I thought, where do I orient in the chaotic to lawful spectrum? I know I'm good. I know I'm not evil, right? But like, what my unique value genuinely is that I will come in and question everything.
Yeah.
I will fight the laws that exist if they don't make sense, and I will help you find the way to the better good. So that is genuinely the mind path that I went down, and I thought, you know what, this is it. This is the name.
Well, I think it's an absolutely thrilling choice, and as a lifetime out of the closet nerd, I totally love it. I maintain that Dungeons and Dragons is the new golf for the business world. So it's just a kind of a way to bond with others, build teams, do wonderful things together. So I love it. And for those of you who are non-nerds out there, you should try D&D. It is fun. People don't bite that play the game. It's actually become very mainstream, and especially a big movie that came out recently. I could do a whole stream about that, but I know people came here for another topic. I would love to talk to you about this idea of community everywhere. I think it's something that's kind of come onto the radar. I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the stream. It seems like it's come onto the radar as a term this year, and I don't know if it was Richard Millington who coined it, or if it's been kind of floating around the ether in other ways. I just did a quick Google before that, and I think because Richard's got such good SEO on his site that it was coming up as a page one result. But what is your context around this idea, and kind of where are you approaching the idea of community everywhere as a concept?
Yeah, I think as a profession and also as an individual, I've gone on this mental journey from community should sit over here by itself and no one else should touch it, please go away, to now recognizing that to be successful, community has to be recognized as a part of every aspect of the organization and every place and time where we are touching, God, that sounds weird, where we are interacting with our customers. And I think the first time that I heard it in those words was actually at the conference in Prague in June. And it was in Max Rothery's presentation where he was talking about some of the experiments they did at Finimize and how transforming how we think about community can really impact how others, our stakeholders and our executives think about community. And so I think that if we can start to present community as the multiple touch points throughout the sales cycle, throughout the customer life cycle, product development, we all know that those things can influence decisions, but we have to bring our stakeholders into that idea first. And so changing how we think about community and recognizing that it is not this standalone thing, right? We all went through this. It's not just forums, right? Right? So we know that it's events. We know that it's advocacy. Well, traditionally, some of those things have lived in other departments, in marketing, in, if we're talking top of funnel building, that lives in sales typically, or in demand gen. If it's product development, there might have been a separate user research group. Now we have to start approaching community with our stakeholders as, hey, where can we be a community first thinking company so that we go, okay, we're going to make this big change. How do we bring our community into that decision? Mm-hmm. We are going to try to drive a new initiative. What role does community play in that? Mm-hmm. And so it comes from us at the community level, but it also comes from our top executives changing their minds to say, hey, if you're going to do a new thing, you need to think about where community fits into that.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that change of mindset. I had a great recent positive experience with a client I'm working with right now, where at the outset of this, and I credit them for really embracing the idea. I brought it up to them and they were like, yes, we want to do this. But the idea of doing a community roadshow, and I'm borrowing this from our dear friend Jenny, who has got actually a terrific template for building these things out. But the community roadshow is typically something that I was thinking about as like, okay, we've kind of baked the community idea. Now we're taking it out to these different stakeholders across the organization who are, in advocacy and customer experience and human resources, like just to make sure that they all understand, like, what is the community about? What is the context? Where are we going to be going with these things? But we did it earlier on. After we had kind of built the initial community concept, we took it out to them. And I think it worked a lot better that way because we got more upfront input. We got to get the initial reactions from the different departments, like, oh yeah, you know what? We're excited about this. Like, boy, this is overdue. We really needed to do a community. But I am kind of wondering, like, there are those cases where organizations, feel like they need to turn on a community, like a customer community, and they haven't really thought about it as something that's central to the business, and like that's something at the leadership or the executive level. What are your thoughts about sort of changing that mindset with the leadership team? What kind of things do you need to do and of course I've got my own ideas about that, but I'd
Yeah.
like to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Well, I'll say it's really interesting moving into the consulting space because I've run into this a lot where I get outreach from someone or I get brought into a project where someone says, we really need a community or we really need this community program specifically. And being the chaotic good person that I am, I ask them, why? Why do you think you need, what are you trying to achieve with that? And then I say, okay, let's take a step back and look at the other symptoms that might be causing whatever problem you're coming up against. And let's deliver a holistic solution that does not just exist in let's launch a community platform and cross our fingers and hope the problem gets solved, right?
Yeah.
So I think that my advice to anybody who is thinking, you know, gosh, everybody else has a community, we need one too, would be firstly, community is such a huge concept, and this community everywhere concept really starts to capture that, where it, when you say you want to launch a community, do you actually mean you want a community platform? There's another client I'm working with who said, you know, we really think we need to start building community. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? Firstly, you already have a community, you have customers, so you have a community. How are we going to then turn that group of people into an activated, excited group to achieve whatever goals you're trying to get to? And so I try to turn them away from the tactics first and try to really dig into what is the actual problem you're trying to solve. And there are mechanisms in community we may be able to use to do that, but let's not jump straight into let's launch a thing. Because I feel like I can't do my job as an advisor if I am coming in and being told, just go do the thing.
Right.
Okay, but how is that success going to be measured, right? How can we intelligently speak to what we're trying to achieve if we don't start with what is the problem?
Yeah. Kelly Pratt had a comment here. Yes. How are you going to help your existing community feel like a community? Yeah.
I love that, Kelly.
Yeah.
I mean, that really speaks to how you select your tactics, right? Because you have to know your community, understand how they want to engage, what they expect from you, what they expect from each other before you can come up with a plan on how to deliver something valuable to them.
Yeah. And you know, like as you were kind of describing that, I was also thinking in the back of my mind that so many of these organizations, they already have a community of sorts. It's just a matter of activating or recognizing, you know, what that group is made up of and sort of understanding them a little better. So much of what we do as consultants, I feel like, is trying to uncover what's assumed known, and you know, having conversations with people that they're trying to reach, maybe understanding those audiences a little bit differently, a little bit better than what was there before, and then figuring out how to activate them. And do you find that there's a lot of confusion between the idea of a community platform and the actual community itself? He asks us a loaded question.
No, I do. And I think that's why it's important to have those discovery conversations first. So whether you're working within a company or whether you're coming in as a consultant, I think the important thing is to recognize that there are assumptions based on history. There are assumptions based on a small group of people giving feedback, typically the loudest people giving feedback, and that doesn't necessarily represent the broader community either. So when you have 2 or 3 customers who are very loud and they like to complain and they're telling you, we need a platform, are you going to go and then spend $50,000 plus to implement a community platform and then hire somebody to run it? And I mean, that's a big investment to make based on a small amount of data. And so I think that I'm not shy anymore. I used to be because there's so much pressure to deliver. But at this point in my career, I'm not shy anymore about saying, you know what, we need more data. We need to go run a survey. We need to do some user interviews. We need to understand where our particular community is coming from. And I think it's also important at that point to recognize where you already have community happening. And so I think a lot of these companies have customer advisory boards. They have advocacy programs. And we need to look at what's already in place and see, you know, are there ways that we can expand instead of starting something new? Are there ways we can take what we've learned in this other program and extend that to a different group that we want to reach? Let's say developers, right? So I think that pumping the brakes for a minute when you hear we're going to launch a platform is always a good idea, to ask some intelligent questions and really get your stakeholders thinking. Because I think a lot of times, even with my kids, it's like, okay, I know you think you want to do this thing, but let's take a minute, let's breathe, and let's
What are the
think
consequences?
through,
Yeah.
right, what is going to happen as a result of this, and
Yeah.
is that what we want?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You know, and I think too about, you know, those communities exist, and, you know, as you said, like advisory boards and different kinds of groups that you know, the company already maybe has touch points with. But even just thinking from a platform perspective, you know, I think, you know, Richard makes the point in his blog about this community everywhere piece that, you know, it's not just a community centric platform anymore. Well, I don't know that it ever was, but you know, community may already be elementally existing or in a primordial state. Let's put it that way, on a lot of different social platforms. You may have like elements of community, sense of community on a TikTok, or in a Facebook group, or here on LinkedIn, and that's okay. Those are good places, and I think, coming back to your point, that part of that, getting more data, is understanding how people are choosing to interact with your organization, with your brand, with your company, and, you know, recognizing like, well, if we are going to invest in a centralized platform, which I think still has a place in community ecosystems, it's still an important place to have. How are we describing its value compared to those other outposts of community sentiment and community feeling that's out there?
Yeah, and I think so. I've struggled with this a bit as well. When I was at Mongo, we had an executive who was very deeply invested in us spending time on Reddit and Hacker News, and that was problematic for me because you know, I'm a huge advocate for having your own space that you can help set and build the culture, that you can make sure is safe, that you can deliver unique value, and that you own your data, and you're not susceptible to some Facebook or other platform, Twitter or other platform owner making some drastic change to the policy that essentially decimates your community, right? So that is at the core of me what I think is typically best. Now, recognizing the reality of how the technology has evolved, how our behavior has evolved, and the fact that my kids' generation is not into the platforms that we grew up using, we have to adapt our understanding of what that means. So, to your point, if you do decide to launch a platform, you have to recognize also the other places where people are engaging. And I was talking with someone on Slack yesterday about trying to reach that younger group of newly minted adults. And, you know, where, if they're hanging out in places like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram, and those are not typically places we think about cultivating engagement between members, right? You can have a comment section, but people kind of flit in and out of there, and you don't really build that relationship, right? So we have to recognize that we may have to take some sort of a hybrid approach. And that might not look the way that it used to, or it might bring in more interesting solutions that allow us to better integrate the visibility and the engagement that we would have on a TikTok channel with an engaged captive audience, if you will, on an owned platform. And so I think that if you do go all in on an owned platform, you're right. You have to be very clear on what your actual value add is by coming to that channel, recognizing where your audience wants to be. I would never launch, don't hold this against me, okay? Future people, future me, don't hold this against me. But as of this moment, I would not launch a just owned platform for teens and young adults. They won't go there. And if you have an app, that's a one-up, right? They can at least install that on their phone, and that's a place they can go. But they're not going to come back to community.whatever and engage on your platform online. So I think that it's really key to understand what is valuable to them and what do you offer that they uniquely cannot get anywhere else. And in a lot of cases, that is your internal company knowledge and experts. It might be training, it might be certifications. You know, as people start to build their careers, those things are valuable to them. But it all comes back to understanding who is your target audience, what do they need and want and expect from you, and do you uniquely only provide that in your space, or do you offer that outside of that space?
That's a really terrific insight. I am fascinated by this, and I think, like, for me, the yardstick tends to be, you know, with these other platforms. Like, I don't want to make those other platforms go away because people are choosing to engage there, but I do want that owned platform experience in a lot of cases. And you know, for me, like, the yardstick is, you know, do people start to create a sense of belonging, you know, in any of those spaces? Like, that's what we really kind of come down to. Like, do I feel associated with your company, with your brand, with your message and what you have? And I can get that on an Instagram channel. But I want them to come to my own space, ideally, so that they can have some of those interactions. But as you said, like, demographically, some younger users may not feel a tug at their heart to do something like that. Maybe you could get them into a Discord, but
they do use Discord. I will say that. That was one thing my 13-year-old especially kind of went off and discovered with her friends on her own. And I was like, oh, goody, you're using technology.
That's fantastic. I love it.
But I will say that, you know, and as you were following up on that as well, I was thinking really the key that you have to get if you want to build an owned space and you want to attract the next generation, it needs to be very compelling why they would come there. And you made a good point about how you said, it escapes me now, but basically thinking about how do we elevate them? How do we make it? Because on a TikTok channel, yeah, they can comment, but beyond that, they don't really build any sort of a self-worth, self-valuation there. So one thing that community builders could do to bring those folks in is to think about how are you putting the spotlight on them as they do great things. Celebrate together. How do we win together? How do we make sure that when you're coming here, it's because you feel like we as a brand and your fellow community members are all clapping when you do something amazing.
Right. Yeah, as Dev says, what's in it for them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Yeah. So Jenny had this comment up a little bit earlier, and I wanted to be sure we address this. We've been talking about the advantages of community everywhere, but are there some downsides to this as well? And I don't know that I have an answer to this. I've been kind of turning this around in my brain for the past few minutes.
Yeah, I think so if I put my change manager hat on, I think the biggest disadvantage is you have less ownership when you are trying to spread community dandelion seeds everywhere, right? If your mental model of community everywhere within an organization is, I want everybody to be educated and empowered to do what they do in the community in a way that is productive for them and positive for the community. That's like life goals for community manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
If my goal is to do that, but I have other stakeholders who are detractors, or I have stakeholders who are, we'll say, stubbornly ignorant of how they're supposed to interact with the community, that can create more conflict, right? And in the past, it's the same problem, but in the past, we've dealt with it by being like, nah, you can just go. I'm going to take my toys and I'm going to stay over here where I can keep an eye on them, right? And instead, we have to think about, how do we change the organization's mindset about how community should interface with the rest of the org? And that's a lot of work, to be able to change the executive minds, to be able to go to all of your stakeholders and say, I want to have someone on your team who is like the dedicated community expert, who understands deeply how your team is supposed to interface. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of change management work. And it takes away from the time that we could be spending just focusing on our baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And instead, we're trying to build a whole new world for the baby and say, I don't like the way that it is. It's scary right now. Let's make everybody happy and love the baby, and know that that is our shared benefit, our shared blessing, if you will. Like, we're a whole family and the baby is ours, as opposed to, no, you can't hold my baby because you might have COVID, right? Like, that's I'm getting off on this this
Poor
tangent
baby.
here. Yes. The bottom line is, it's a ton of work to get everybody on board. And I've personally run up a lot against people who feel threatened when you come into their space too.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of political stakeholder management that I think especially newer community managers may not be mature or experienced or skilled enough to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
People who prefer to be on the community ops side probably don't want to be spending a ton of time going out and talking to all their stakeholders all the time.
Yeah.
So it really requires us to have a more robust footprint in the organization and have an executive, or at least a leadership level person, who can go out and build those connections and drive that acceptance and support for the work that we're doing.
So important. Yeah. I mean, like, having that champion to kick down doors for you is incredible. And hopefully they do it in such a way that it's not terrible. But like, even if you're like pretty new at the game and you are put in that position of having to be the evangelist, for community, inside of an organization, it's so intimidating for some people to do. And especially if you're not necessarily an outgoing personality. I know a lot of us in the community space are, but a lot of us are introverts too. Yeah. And just kind of, I almost wonder, sort of like, if you find yourself in the position to have to do that, my impression, at least like how I would approach it, if I was a newcomer to a community that I'm put in charge of, and I've got to reach out to these different departments, these different groups, I feel like maybe one of the better approaches might be to say, like, hey, I want to come and learn from you. I'm charged with doing this community thing. I think there's some things it could do that could help your part of the organization, but I just need to understand better.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad, that's sort of the learner's mind, right? To
Yeah.
the beginner's mind, to try to go in and do that.
Yeah, and I think there's a whole conversation we can have on stakeholder management, because it really is it is so much finesse. And as a neurodivergent person myself, and seeing others struggle in this space, I empathize with the challenges associated with that. I think that the best thing that you can do is get one influential executive on your side.
Yeah.
That's step one, because that person, there are some people in this world who, no matter what you have to say and how smart you are, if you are below them in the organization, they won't listen to you. And that is the most frustrating experience, and it will burn you out. And so at some point, you are going to need to have backup. And that person needs to have enough power and influence to convince others to listen to you and to take the time to hear what you have to say. And if they know that you have that executive's backing, they're more likely to take what you have seriously. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah, no,
it's a reality of what we deal with.
100%. In fact, I was thinking about, as you're talking about that, like one of the common exercises I'm sure you do, and I do as well, going into an organization, is a bit of stakeholder mapping. And if I'm asking the question of like, well, who from the executive or the leadership team is your champion for this? If they can't answer that question, that is a huge red flag for me. I get really worried about what the potential future, for community is in that organization. If they can't name a person or persons that are like really behind the effort, and like, why are you guys doing it then? Right?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the issues that I have dealt with my clients is not just in community, not knowing who their executive sponsor is. So I think it's an opportunity for a lot of people to really think about what that means and the importance of having that, regardless of what part of the org you're working in. You need to know who you can go to if you run into problems. It may not be your boss. It may not be your boss's boss. It may be somebody else in the org who is influential and who believes in what you're doing. So it's important for you to have that person in your back pocket to say, hey, I don't need you to go like be a bulldog right now. Maybe I do, but I don't need you to do that. What I need you to do is help me understand how to navigate this situation within the culture, with this particular person, whatever it is.
That is huge. Yeah. I would much rather have a secret agent than the king or the queen in my court in some cases, because I want to know, like, how do I navigate this situation? How do I navigate the organization? And maybe it's somebody who's not in a titled position of power in the organization,
Right.
but somebody who really has been there and understands how the org works and can help you to figure out, like, how do I finesse this situation? How do I understand, like, why this person from product marketing isn't on board with me doing this community that could help them? Like, sometimes you just need insight
Yeah. I mean, I've told this story before, but I had a product marketing, or no, an event marketing person who was extremely kind and nice and fun when we met one-on-one. And then I would hear through my boss that she was complaining to her boss that basically I found out she was worried that we were going to like take over her job.
Oh, sure.
And and it was like, whoa, wait, hold on. I do not want to run corporate events. Like, I have a piece of this that is developer events, and that needs to sit within what you're doing, but I do not want to own your whole conference, please. And once we cleared that up, it was so much easier to get things done because we were working together instead. But I didn't even know this was a problem until it went up and over. And having an executive above me who could advocate for me and the team and explain and give context and trust that we were doing the right things was much better than having her come to me and say, you're in trouble, which I'll tell you, that is what she did. She came to me and said, you're in trouble. You pissed off this person. You need to go fix it. And it was like, wait, what happened? I'm so confused. So, it is so pivotal. And I think that folks should spend a few minutes really thinking about, like, who is their go-to person.
Yeah. And just a quick plug for having a consultant in your corner in an organization is sometimes we're the ones who have to uncover the ugly truth, and confront situations. That is a play for.
That's where I was expecting you to go with this. You should just bring us in. No, really though, that is my current line of thinking with where I can probably add value for a lot of companies is you already have a community team or you have a community manager, but they're struggling.
Yeah.
And they need either coaching, they need advocacy, they need something that they're not getting to help them grease their own gears to get things moving again.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the most valuable things that we can do is not come in and I'm going to tell you how it's done, right? I'm going to come in and help you succeed. That is my goal. And I think that is, especially with the job market and the economic situation for community managers right now, and for companies, frankly, I think we're going to find that a lot of companies end up hiring these more junior community folks, and they're not set up to succeed, and they're going to struggle. They're going to get burnt out. And I don't want to see that, right? I want them to succeed, but I also understand maybe that company can't afford to hire a senior or executive level community person. They're doing what they can, but they're just not getting that traction.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that function of having an outside voice come in with some expertise in the industry is sometimes helpful to, it's not that we're coming in and saying the emperor has no clothes, but that we range, and I know you and I range personality wise within organizations as well, where like I'm the diplomat.
And I'm very much not. I am the emperor has no clothes person.
It ranges, and sometimes we need to vary that based on the client that we're working with. Like sometimes being the diplomat just won't cut it, and sometimes you have to be the provocateur within the space. But again, like that's a value to somebody that's a community manager who's got to live there and stay there, because we can express an unpopular truth with, and because we're not long timers in that organization, that's not our function. That's not what we're there for. I continue to view the role of the consultant as help me get there quickly and without making a bunch of stupid mistakes, and then pretty much get out or just come back every once in a while and we'll tell you what we're doing, right?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think maybe that is, I've seen a lot of consulting engagements where either the scope is not clear to the team, or the timeline is not well defined. And so the team is not super on board with the consultant being there, because they're like, okay, are you trying to get me fired, or what are we doing? And like, my whole gig, and I know yours is too, is like, I want to make you successful. That's why I'm here. I don't want your job.
Definitely don't.
I want your boss to not have to hire other people.
Yep.
I want you to succeed. So let's find a way to make that happen. And yeah, I think that's a really valuable insight, is that at some point a consultant is the faster, cheaper way to get to where you want to be, as opposed to continuing to try to dig your way out with a spoon, and you're digging down instead of up, right? Like,
right. Yeah. So Jamie, I'm wondering if we could just do maybe a lightning round of some suggestions here to sum up, what we've been talking about.
Sure.
If you are finding yourself as a community manager, and you want to introduce this idea of community everywhere within the organization, where do you start? Like what does the cookbook look like? What is my recipe of steps that I should be thinking about? Not to put you on the spot to say like it needs to be in a particular order, but
No, I think that's a great question. So I think the first step is always going and getting to know your stakeholders. If you don't already have a relationship with them, that has to be first. Understanding who are the most important people for you to get on board is step one, and then figuring out how to do that. And so I think one play that people could use is to try to get somebody to be nominated as the community champion within every one of your stakeholder teams. Like, pick one person, that's my go-to person for your team. They are your representative. And maybe you have a community everywhere council, and you bring in those champions, and you talk about, hey, these are the initiatives my team's working on. How about your team? Okay, where does community fit into all this? Let's make sure we're coordinated, because the community, despite the fact that we are separate teams with our own communication channels, the community is the same group of people regardless of who is talking to them. So let's make sure we're giving them a consistent message, and that all of our stuff is working together. I worked with the DevRel team at MongoDB, and it blew me away how long they were working completely separately from us. And it was like, we need one consistent content calendar so that when you guys are doing stuff, we can help promote it and we can build activities around it, right? And so I think that's the big play there, is getting everybody aligned, but without asking too much of every team to restructure how they work. That's step one, is really get them on board and get them to a point where they can give you time they're comfortable giving, but in a way that allows community to integrate into their workflow, as opposed to asking them to change everything about how they're working.
That's a really great insight. So, Jamie, I can't believe 45 minutes have blown by so quickly here. It's always a joy to talk to you, and I appreciate your wisdom and and showing up here and being happy to share your experiences with everybody. And thank you to everybody who jumped in and joined on the stream here today too. I saw Ilker joined in a little bit late and said hello, my friend. Good to see you. Really appreciate this. Would love to keep the conversation going. If you happen to tune in after the show and you want to drop a comment on this event or in the YouTube channel for Clocktower Advisors, would be very happy to keep engaging in the conversation. I'm sure Jamie would as well. Jamie, if somebody wants to learn more about Chaotic Good Consulting, what's the website? And drop a little commercial on us here.
Yeah, so chaoticgoodconsulting.com, and there's a contact us form. Really basic. We want to get to know who you are and what the project that you might be looking for help with is. Our main value add is we can help you with scaling. So working primarily with small to mid-sized businesses, trying to help y'all get to a point where things are running smoothly and you're ready to get into the big leagues. So if anybody needs help, please, we are taking new clients through the end of the year. So give me a shout.
Here. Chaotic Good Consulting. Jamie, anything fun planned for the weekend?
Well, my kids are going on a camp out to Crater Lake. So I will be home with all of the farm animals. So I will have a quiet weekend.
Oh, that's so nice. Very good. Very good. Well, for those of you who tuned in, thank you so much for coming to the show. I hope you got something out of today's conversation. I know I did. Tune in 2 weeks, this Friday, and this is going to date me, same bat time, same bat channel. And we'll be meeting with my dear friend, Amadou Diallo, who is a community builder in his own right, a griot, storyteller, and amazing videographer. We're going to be talking about the use of improv and storytelling in communities. And
that sounds super fun.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a pre-show practice session where we were kind of improving back and forth with storytelling, and it was a blast. We had such an amazing time. So show up for that. Participate in a little bit of a storytelling exercise with us for that event. Again, that's going to be Friday, August the 25th. In the meantime, thank you for showing up. You can follow and like and comment on us on the YouTube Clocktower Advisors channel, as well as here on by following Clocktower Advisors on LinkedIn. Be good to yourself this weekend. Take some time off. You're no good to anybody else if you're not good to yourself first. And we will see you back here in a couple of weeks. Be well and build great communities. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Todd.